Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile 1 discussion. Granny Games have mentioned that they still think they're on track for a 3.26 release during June. We shall see whether that ends up being kept or not, but in the interim, they're going to be running a private league promotion. I think the thing that encouraged them to do this was a tremendous amount of interest that took place in Pox's private league. This was a league that was set up when it was announced that Settlers was going to be extended for pretty much forever. And Granny Games saw that popularity and thought, right, we can potentially do something a little bit more than Pox was able to pull off there. Private leagues tend to be a halfway house between solo self-found and a general trade league economy. A general trade league economy is very, very big. A solo self-found is the smallest possible trade league you can have, where there's no one else that you're able to trade with. Private leagues tend to be right in the middle. One of the things that's really popular with private leagues is that this medium-sized trade economy means that there's a number of resources that in the base game, where the best use for them is just to go and trade them to someone that can do a massive crafting project. And here I'm thinking things like Vivid Vultures, the Synthesis reroll and Implicit Beast. These end up being things you can just simply use by themselves because there's no one that's able to just outbid the entire market in order to buy hundreds of them for their massive crafting project. Because you don't have these mirror crafts taking place, you end up in a situation where a lot of these just are more reasonable to use. At the same time though, you also have enough players around that if you do get something that's a really lucky drop, but something you just have no use case for at all, then you can probably find someone that is genuinely interested in and excited at the prospect of acquiring your lucky drop item. Essentially, that feeling of the first couple of days of Trade League where there's lots of things that drop on the ground that you're actually interested in, that tends to go for longer in a private league than it does in a trade league. On top of that, there's a number of additional difficulty mods that are available in private league events. Now, private leagues normally have a fixed set of difficulty mods you can turn on or off quite individually. You've got quite a bit of granular control. That's not going to be the case here. Instead, Granny Games are experimenting with something else where there's a number of both risk-reward mods. For example, you can add in Affliction into every zone, or you can add in the Necropolis mechanics to every zone, or alternately, there are some new raw difficulty mods. We'll get to those in a sec because what I'm going to be playing is going to be something that is focused upon some of those difficulty mods. I'll put a link to Granny Games' list here though, and that's down in the description below. Fair warning, there is a video in that if you play it, it will play on repeat, and it has a very subtle musical backing to it. This is something that took me an embarrassingly long time to work out where the noise was coming from. In terms of the categorization Granny Games have used, they've put them into 3 overall categories. The first one is things that are reasonably close to the base game. The third one is things that are wildly divergent from the base game. And the second one is those first 5 modifiers with additional difficulty mods. I actually think though it's probably more sensible to categorize them a little bit differently. So I would categorize them as category 1, which is things that are reasonably similar to the base game. This is Settlers, this is Settlers with Idols, this is Settlers with alternate Ascendancies, this is Settlers with Shifting Stones, this is Settlers plus Idols plus Calandra, and this is Settlers plus Shifting Stones plus Atlas Invasion, although that last one might actually fit in the second category. The second category is going to be options where there's additional risk-reward mechanics in play, and these are substantial. So, Settlers plus Necropolis, Settlers plus Affliction, Settlers plus Alternate Ascendancies plus Sentinel, Settlers plus Necropolis plus Beyond, and potentially Settlers plus Shifting Stones plus Atlas Invasion could be in either of these categories. I'll quickly explain what's involved in the Shifting Stones and Atlas Invasion things because I haven't run for a long time. Shifting Stones means that every zone that you run will have one of the extra content related keystones, for example the Expedition Nuke, will be applied to it. Additionally, the appropriate type of content will also be applied to that zone. I believe Shifting Stones takes place from Act 1, but I'm not 100% certain on that. Atlas Invasion is something that was run as a really chaotic event in PathOfExile's past, and this is where every single zone in the game has 5 additional Atlas bosses in it. Atlas bosses are basically anything the Maven can capture. So you could be running through Act 1 looking for Brutus and suddenly get ganked by the Shaper. Now it's important to note that these bosses will be scaled down to the zone that you're in, and they do tend to drop a lot of loot. That's why I call it both a risk and reward mechanic, but it's not perhaps as extreme as things like Affliction or alternate ascendancies and sentinels will feel. So those are two of the categories of mods. The third category is reusing something that Grinding Gear Games put together for the Gauntlet. The Gauntlet is the biggest player run event in Path of Exile. It's a race that takes place that is basically Path of Exile on extreme hard mode. And just beating the campaign in the Gauntlet was an enormous achievement. However, there were also a number of changes Grinding Gear Games made where they added some additional augmentations to some of the endgame bosses, particularly Pinnacle and Uber Pinnacle bosses, that not very many people got to see. The reason for this was that Gauntlet was a hardcore only event. So some of these private league mechanics that are available are essentially an opportunity to experience those Gauntlet changes to bosses, but to do so without the hardcore rule set. And ultimately, this is going to be what I'm going to run myself. I am going to run Settlers, plus the Phrecia Ascendancies, plus the Gauntlet boss augmentations, plus the Gauntlet modifiers. This is going to be substantially harder than the base game, but it's not going to have the unforgiving elements that are added by playing in hardcore, nor is it going to have the unforgiving elements that are added by playing in solo self-found. So it'll be an opportunity to experience some of the work that was done making those fights so exhilarating, but to do so in a less punishing version of the game than the Gauntlet originally was designed for. Now, there's a whole bunch of information about the technical details of how you can create or join a private league. The key thing you want to keep in mind here is that if you are running a private league yourself, you'll have a couple of ways you can invite players. You can invite players individually by their account name. This is probably the best way if you're playing with a dedicated group of friends. The second thing you can do is you can provide a link where people can then request a slot in your league. Or the third option is that you can provide an unconditional join link. An unconditional join link, anyone that clicks on that is automatically enrolled into your private league. Now, normally unconditional join links are something that when you're paying for a private league, they're not really worth using because a lot of people will misclick them. They'll click it thinking, oh, this is a chance to get more information, but then they'll click through it and then not realize they're actually taking up one of your paid for spots. However, in this case where the leagues are free, I think it is definitely worth your while having an unconditional join link, because unless your name is Fubgun, you're not likely to hit the 20,000 player cap, and so you won't need to go through and delete people in order to keep under that limit. It's worth keeping in mind also that if you have a link set up where people have to be approved by you in order to get in, you then have to have someone, yourself or one of the officers of your league, go through and manually approve everyone, which is a big hassle. Anyways, Grinding Gear Games then have a few little FAQs here. Firstly, will these templates always be available going forward? And the answer here is no, they're going to be available during the event period, and that's the current plans. What happens with alternate ascendancies and idols after this event ends? They're not going to be made core in any way, but they'll be something that might occasionally come back for similar promotions to this. Are these events voided? No. So when they end, I'm not sure whether your characters will dump into Standard League or into Settlers League. That's something that will have to be clarified, but it'll be one or the other. Are there hardcore options? Yes, all of these templates are available in either standard or hardcore versions. How will Affliction work? How will Sentinels work? This is one of the most commonly asked questions, and essentially it's going to be the 3.25 version. Now, the precise wording that's used here isn't abundantly clear. The way that I am interpreting this is that 100% of zones will have an Affliction Wildwood, or 100% of zones will have a Sentinel case. However, it is possible that I'm misreading this, and it is possible that what's intended is that all throughout the game, there will be a chance, the same chance that tier 16 and 17 maps have to have these particular events, that this will apply to every single map in the game and also to every zone throughout the campaign. I'm expecting that it's 100% chance, but it could be that it's just the same as it is in 16s and 17s. Anyway, that is the private league promo. I'm going to be putting a link down in the description of this video to my Discord. In that Discord, I'm going to be setting up both coordination for my own private league, which will be run out of global channel 16807 and is going to have the alternate ascendancies and the gauntlet modifiers, but is otherwise going to be softcore trade. But there's also a channel where you can plug other private leagues. So there'll be an opportunity for people, whether they're content creators or not, to plug their own private leagues as well. I'm going to leave it there. May your Varlorbs have interesting results.